How about now? Is now better? Tell me how the audio sounds. Is the audio too loud? Is it too quiet? I think I was double muted earlier. Is it too loud? Good? Okay. Okay, alright. So in this video we're going to be doing a live PC build for the 9950X with the, as I unboxed earlier today, the Crosshair Hero motherboard. Is the audio not good? No? Oh, you mean it's I guess the audio's good. It doesn't look like I'm peaking too much. I'm trying not to make it where I'm too loud. Am I too loud? What if should I turn it down a little bit? I'm not used to sitting this far back from the microphone. The audio is perfect? Okay, so, alright, we're good. Okay. So we're going to be doing this build. We're going to be taking a look at, unfortunately, I don't have an SSD available, so the goal is to basically build the PC and then post into the BIOS. And then I want to test both 2 sticks and 4 sticks of DDR5. So we're going to be doing, what is this, 48 plus 48. So we're going to test 48 gigabytes and 96 gigabytes. We're going to test Asus's new Nitro path. So I'll be honest with you guys, I could not decide which motherboard to get today. So I went to Micro Center. I kind of thought I was going to get the Crosshair, and then I was like, well, should I get the MSI because it's like $200 cheaper? And MSI is advertising QDIM support on their BIOS, but I think that all of them will be able to do that. Here, let me, where is the thing here? Okay. So all these motherboards, except for MSI is the one brand, both the Godlike and the Carbon are showing on the website that they can do these memory speeds, and on top of that, they are claiming CUDIM, or I call it QDIM. QDIM supports QDIM, clock driver bypass mode only. But essentially this, so remember back in the summer, remember does anybody remember Cam 2? You guys remember the Cam 2 motherboards? So CUDIM is essentially bringing the Cam 2, it's like Cam 2, but it is in the standard DIMM form factor for DDR5. So what this means is it's going to have a clock driver, which basically means it is a signal regenerator for the RAM, which should help a lot in being able to achieve very high speeds with less voltage. And it basically means that potentially things like running 9600 megatransfers, even 10,000 megatransfers will be possible with not too much trouble thanks to the clock driver. So this is something that MSI is advertising that they already have on their X870E motherboards, at least on this one, on the Carbon and the Godlike. But I don't know what that means for the others, because Asus has Nitro path, which should help with better wire trace outs, better signal to noise ratio, but you know, it remains to be seen. MSI is advertising the highest memory speed, you know, like 8400 plus, but they also say they have QDIM support, which means it can go even higher. But again, this type of RAM doesn't exist today, so this is something that will be investigated in the future once newer DDR5. You can think of this as DDR5 1.5, so it's like a half generation refresh of DDR5 compared to the current DDR5 that we have now. So this, I expect this to improve stuff like memory training should go by much faster, higher speeds should be easier to achieve. Even with lower end motherboards, higher speeds are achievable. So this alleviates the strain on both the memory controller and the actual motherboard's physical trace layout, because this is supposed to clean up the noisy signal from the motherboard. So that's what this does. Today there isn't anything like that. So you're at the mercy of how good the motherboard's wire traces are. So that was why I was thinking, like, should I get the Carbon? Originally I was thinking, you know, Crosshair, because it has all the overclocking tools that I know it has. But I was kind of on the fence. I couldn't decide between Carbon and Crosshair. And then then I started looking at the Taichi, and the Taichi is the best one if you don't want any compromise on your graphics card X16 slot. So if you're somebody who doesn't like the idea of dropping the lane number down to like X8 speed, the Taichi is the only one. The Taichi and the Taichi Lite do not distribute any of the graphics card's lanes to M.2 drives. So that's the nice thing about the Taichi. I think that's the Taichi's major selling point. But ultimately, I decided while I was there, I was like, you know what? I'm just going to stick to my original plan, get the Crosshair. And the main reasons were it has dual external clock generators. That was one thing that I currently don't have. And the other thing was ASUS's NitroPath DRAM technology, which is supposed to help with running higher memory speeds. So that and the fact that it has 5 M.2 slots. However, if you run all 5 of them, you lose this second PCIe slot. So, and we kind of learned that back when we did the block diagram earlier this year. So yeah, so there is this caveat to be aware of with the Asus Crosshair Hero. So that is one thing to be aware of. Yes, it does have 5 M.2 drives, but two of the Gen 5 SSDs share lanes with the primary graphics card slot and the second graphics card slot. So if you populate, 1, 2, 3, and the Slim SAS, you can still do 4 NVMEs without impacting the graphics card. But as soon as you turn on the fourth one, this is X8 and this is X4. And if you turn on the fifth one, this guy gets disabled and the graphics card slot's still running at X8. So just keep in mind that is like the one thing worth noting about this motherboard. Otherwise, this motherboard is fully loaded. It is, for now, the flagship motherboard, but I do think I would say if there is one that's better than this one, it would be the MSI Godlike. I think the Godlike is really the no compromise solution, because that motherboard allows you to drive 7 M.2s, and the only trade-off is the graphics card slot runs at X8. But you're still doing potentially 7 M.2s. So I think the Godlike is the only one, as of now, the Godlike's the only one that's higher end than the Crosshair Hero. Otherwise, I think the Crosshair Hero is probably the best one. But you know the old saying, you get what you pay for. So I would expect if this is a $700 motherboard, it better have pretty much all the things that I would need. So what we're going to do now, we're going to go ahead and build it. So I'm going to be using the LandCool 3 tower, the mid-tower case that I featured last year with the Threadripper motherboard build. The Threadripper build has since moved to a different case, so that frees up the LandCool 3. The reason why I need the LandCool 3 is because this is the only case that I have that supports a 360 or 420 AIO. I think the other case that I have that could use this would be the Fractal Torrent, but the Fractal Torrent is much better with air cooling builds, at least in my opinion. So I would much prefer to leave that case with air, and then we're going to use liquid cooling with this case. So we're going to be doing a liquid cooling build. We're going to be using a LandCool 3 with a Deepcool LT720 radiator AIO with the infinity mirror thing here on the top. So we're going to be using that. And then I kind of had to scramble to pick like one graphics card that was available. So the one that was readily available was the reference Radeon 7900 XTX, because all my other GPUs, the 4090, the 4080, the Sapphire Nitro XTX, all those GPUs are in use with other PCs. So this was the one that I had sitting around. So I was like, okay, we're gonna use this. Because I didn't want to pull out my other GPUs on the other systems. You also use the LAN Cool 3 for your main. Hero, it's the only flagship motherboard that lets you use 4 M.2 without affecting the PCIe. No, that actually, well, okay, you're right. Yeah, we just went over that. You're right. Yeah, that's right. But the thing is, there's one caveat. The fourth M.2 that you're talking about is on Slim SAS. Just keep that in mind. See, so the problem is Asus, and I said this in the unboxing video, Asus included a Slim SAS connector for some reason. I don't know why they put this here. Slim SAS is more for enterprise. I mean, it's nice, but it's like, I don't know. I would have rather had either put one of these down there, or alternatively give me an X4 PCIe slot. I think that would have been a better choice. So, yeah. No, Matt, you're right. He's talking about X870. X870E. So guys, the one thing that you'll find is that pretty much all, if you want an X870E motherboard that does not take lanes from the graphics card, the choices are going to be very slim. What I can tell you is that ASRock Taichi, the ASRock Taichi does not do any of this. So the way ASRock did it was ASRock did 1 M.2, 2 M.2, 3 M.2, and 4 M.2. So ASRock Taichi does 1, 2, 3, 4 M.2s, and none of them are taking lanes from the graphics card. Now, they give you an X8 slot, which also will take lanes from the graphics card, but not everybody uses that X8. So you got to be very careful. The decision of the motherboard is, well, the ASRock motherboard is only $450. No, I would say if you want the cheapest X870E, the lowest cost X870E that does not impact the graphics card slot, is the $400 ASRock Taichi Lite. That is a $399 motherboard, flagship motherboard that does not do this. So you got to be careful with the motherboard. If you're somebody who does not want essentially like a big PLX switch that's going to take lanes and give them to drives, the choices are very slim. They are out there. The Taichi and the Taichi Lite do not do this. So those are good choices. And they're EATX boards, though. Yes, you only get one. Well, but think about this, though. The Crosshair is giving you one Gen 5, just like the Taichi, without impacting this. The Taichi is doing one Gen 5, one Gen 4, another Gen 4, and a fourth Gen 4. So the Taichi is doing 3 Gen 4 drives and 1 Gen 5 drive. So you are correct, but it is not impacting the graphics card slot. Now it does have a switch, but the Taichi switch is only for the top and the bottom PCIe slot. It does not have this section. So keep that in mind. So keep that in mind, guys. If you're somebody who doesn't like the idea of your graphics card running at X8, and you're going to be using a lot of M.2 drives, the choice of motherboard, it's slim pickings right now. I think we're going to see a second wave that has a whole bunch of other choices where they don't do this. So keep that in mind. Now, the reason why, no, that's incorrect. That's not correct. The here's the chart, guys. This is the chart. As soon as you plug in the second M.2 drive, this one right here, as soon as you plug this in, this is a Gen 5, now the graphics card will run at X8. And the second slot will run at X4 because it gives 4 of its lanes to M.2_3. So we've outlined this last time when we first covered this during the Gamescom live stream for Asus. So there is only one Gen 5 on Asus on the Crosshair and the Strix that you can run without impacting the GPU. As soon as you use the second one, I should say _3 or _2, it doesn't matter which one. You plug in either one of these, and that drops your graphics card to X8 speed. No, the Strix and the Hero are exactly the same. We can go to the product page. Here, let's look at the product page. There is some confusion here, so look, check this out. Right here. So, when M.2, and remember this is the Crosshair, when M.2_3 is enabled, the graphics card slot will run X8, and the second slot will run X4, and the second M.2 is basically empty. Now, when both M.2.2 and M.2.3 are enabled simultaneously, the second slot will be disabled and the graphics card slot will still be running at X8, because remember, the total lanes are 16. So we have 8 for the graphics card, 4 for this one, and 4 for that one. 4 plus 4 plus 8 equals 16. That's 16 lanes total. It always has to equal 16 lanes. So here, let's do the math on this one. 4 lanes plus 8 lanes, that's 12. Plus 4 lanes for the second slot, that's 16 lanes. This guy is disabled. So no, there are currently no Asus X870E motherboards that allow you to run more than one M.2 drive. So that means you can only use one. Yes, that is correct. Only this one. Only M.2_1. That is the reason why I derived the block diagram, because the block diagram shows you an easy picture to understand the logic. This one is independent from the graphics card. It has its own set of lanes. Now, people are probably wondering, why is it that the older X670E didn't have this limitation? Well, that's because the majority of the X870E motherboards did not feature this. You might have noticed up here, there is an ASM 4242 chipset from ASMedia. This provides the dual USB 4 ports on the back. However, what does this require? It requires 4 PCIe lanes of Gen 4. But for some reason, a whole bunch of motherboard manufacturers wired this to the CPU direct. So they're taking 4 of the 24 lanes. No. The total lanes are 24 CPU lanes. So you have 16 plus 4, that's 20, plus the final 4, which go to the USB 4 chipset. 16 plus 4 is the total usable 24 CPU PCI 5.0 lanes. So yeah, well, I guess what you're saying is using the USB 4 does not affect the graphics card. That is correct, because it's using its own lanes. Now, on the older motherboards, On the last gen, this did not exist. So oftentimes what they would give you is a second M.2. So instead of this as media, they would basically put a second M.2. They put a second Gen 5 M.2. So that's the total. The total for the CPU lanes is 24. The total for the chipset is 12 Gen 4 and 8 Gen 3. Those are your total usable chipset lanes. These are the CPU lanes. So a lot of these motherboards, like the Hero, are using what could have been Gen 5 lanes, but they're wiring those Gen 5 lanes to an S-Media 4242 chip, which only requires 4 lanes of Gen 4. So you're always going to get a guaranteed 1 Gen 5 M.2, and then any additional M.2 that's Gen 5 is going to use the lanes from this big 16 connector, which does share lanes with the graphics card. No, you can use 1 Gen 5. You can use 1 Gen 5, and you can use up to 3 Gen 4. These are all Gen 4. So in the case of the Crosshair Hero, we have 1, 2, and the Slim SAS counts as another NVMe. So this is 3 Gen 4. We have 3 Gen 4, not Gen 5. Those are off the chipset. Is this a quiz? Well, I don't know. It's turning into one. This is the matrix that I drew out, or I wrote earlier. Like, this was... I derived this back in like a month ago. It's been over a month since I drew this. I'm actually glad that I drew this. So, I guess if you're somebody who likes a whole bunch of M.2, then you either run your graphics card at X8, or you have to select a motherboard that gives you, you know, essentially 3 Gen 4 and your Gen 5, and that's pretty much it. So that would be the Tai Chi. So unlike this, so guys, the difference between the Tai Chi and the Hero is the Tai Chi does not have a Slim SAS. Instead, it gives you a regular NVMe drive. Does the ASRock Pro RS have no interference Gen 5? You'd have to look at the block diagram. I have not covered that motherboard, so I'm not sure. Yeah, you can find it in the manual. Okay, so I think, are we clear on that? Because that was one of the things that was holding me up in terms of deciding which motherboard to go with. And ultimately I figured, well, we're going to be using the Hero primarily for overclocking, so I don't really care. I don't see myself putting that many M.2 drives in there. Now, I don't know if I'm going to ever use Slim SAS, to be honest. My biggest criticism, well, okay, if I had to critique ASUS, I would question them. Whose idea was it to include Slim SAS, and why? What was the logic behind Slim SAS? Are there going to be Slim SAS drives that are coming out in the future that are more affordable? Because Slim SAS today is extremely expensive, so that's why no one really uses it. It's an enterprise technology. So it is very weird seeing Slim SAS on a consumer overclocking motherboard. That means your X870E Hero is in the same way with M.2. The Hero, I know that one does some kind of sharing. Is there, I don't know. I'd have to look at it again. It's been a long time since I've looked at the original Hero, the older Hero. That one might actually be putting the USB 4 on the chipset. I know I've derived that block diagram. I did the drawing for it a long time ago. It's been like 2 years at this point since I looked at the X670E Hero. But that one might actually be good. That one, yeah. Okay, so I think I remember. So on that one, where is my here? So on the X670 Hero, the difference is this doesn't exist. This is actually an Intel Thunderbolt chip, which is like down here. So that's like down here. And then instead, you have an M.2. You have a second Gen 5 M.2 up here. So you got M.2 here. So basically, on the X670E Hero, you have one and then you have two Gen 5 M.2 slots on the older Hero. And then I guess the third one is like here or something. It's been a long time since I've looked at it. Guys, what's really going to make the old... If you're someone who likes M.2 and not taking lanes that much, you're probably not going to be a fan of a lot of these X870s because... And the real reason is because of this. This is the reason. Because this, on X670E, this doesn't exist. So this is gone. Think of this as like non-existent. Which means what most of the motherboard manufacturers did is in this empty spot up here, they gave you a second Gen 5 M.2, which has its own dedicated lanes. Because you got 4 lanes up here available. See, does that make sense? So some people might prefer the previous generation motherboards if they didn't care about USB 4. Now the thing about USB 4, USB 4 uses a technology that does not exist on the older USB. It uses something called PCIe tunneling. So USB 4 features a technology which is actually a Thunderbolt technology, but it has basically been applied to USB 4. So it can use something called PCIe tunneling. So what does that mean? That means a device that normally would plug in to a PCIe slot can actually function when plugged into a USB 4 port. So what is an example of a device that can take advantage of USB 4's PCIe tunneling? Well, an external GPU. An external GPU can be plugged in to either of these USB 4 ports, and you can basically run an external graphics card to your desktop computer. As weird as that sounds, I don't think there's a lot of people that would do that, but technically you can do that. The other thing you can run are monitors because of DisplayPort Alt mode. USB 4 supports DisplayPort Alt mode, so you can connect monitors to your USB 4 provided you have a DisplayPort to USB-C cable or just a USB-C cable that runs to a USB-C port on the monitor, and you can actually drive monitors using the integrated graphics in the Ryzen CPU. So there's a lot of stuff. The other thing that I'll personally be using a Thunderbolt 3 AverMedia capture card, and I'll plug that straight into this. So I already have that ready to go for the PlayStation 5 Pro when that shows up. So I will definitely be making use of USB 4. That is something that you cannot do. I mean, you can do it with regular USB, although there's latency with regular USB. When you have 40 gigabit of bandwidth on a USB-C port, you don't have any latency anymore. See, so that's the benefit of that 40 gigabit USB 4. So there's a reason why this is a good thing overall in terms of future-proofing your system, whether you know it or not today, versus having another M.2 drive. You can use 4 to Gen 5. Well, I don't know about 4 Gen 2. You can do, yes, you could do, yes, on the Hero, I think you could do 1, 2, 3, potentially 4 Gen 5 on the Hero, if the Hero was set up like this. Now, I don't know if it actually had this. But remember, the third and the fourth drive, if they're like that, they're taking lanes from the graphics card. So just keep that in mind. So anyway. So that's the benefit of the newer chipset. Like, it's providing Wi-Fi 7. It's providing that USB 4, which a lot of people are thinking like, well, when am I going to ever use USB 4? Well, you never know, you know. And I'm the type of person that goes by the motto, it's better to have something and not need it than to need something and not have it when you actually need it. So it's one of those things. Anyway, so today we're going to be putting together this PC. So we're going to be using the 9950X flagship, because if you're buying a flagship motherboard, you should be using a flagship CPU. It has a VRM that's meant for this CPU. And then we're going to be populating it with 4 sticks of DDR5 right here. And we're going to see how that goes. The manual says it only takes from the PCIe when you plug the M.2 in the PCIe. Okay, well, it could be set up that way. Like I said, it's been like 2 years. The Crosshair Hero, the X870E Crosshair Hero is a 2-year-old motherboard. I covered it when it was new at launch 2 years ago, and I remember drawing the block diagram, but it's been too long. Unfortunately, I don't fully remember it. So just to kind of show people the hardware that we're going to be using, so we're going to be using a MSI. This is an MSI MPG. Yes, we're going to be using an MSI power supply for an Asus motherboard. So an MSI MPG A1000G. This is a 1,000 watt made by Channelwell Technology, or CWT. So this is a PCI Gen 5 ready. So if I was using a 40 series graphics card, I could use the native cable. It is included with this power supply. However, my 4090 is in use in the Threadripper system, so we're not going to mess with that right now. So instead, we're going to be using, for the GPU, we're just going to be using the standard Radeon RX 7900 XTX. This one is actually from Sapphire, but it's still the reference card. You just got the NZXT C1000 watt. Yeah, I think it's probably the exact same. Yeah, I think that's the same one, just different. All right, so let me do something here. I can barely see because I'm being blinded by this light in front of me. All right, I'm gonna turn that light off. There, that's better. Because I could not see. Like, I was staring at the chat and I'm like, this is gonna give me a headache with this light just in my eyes the whole time. All right, so we're going to, I guess for the cooler, we're gonna be using and I already pre-installed it on the top of the LandCool case. So you guys can see, so this is a 360 AIO from Deepcool. So we're going to be using that. This is actually the only decent liquid cooler that I have. So we're going to be using this because it's easier to build with if you're messing with a lot of memory. I guess what I'll do, I guess we can put this back for now. All right, put that over there, put this here. All right, this is the main thing. Now, I still strongly feel as though, now this is my opinion, but I think that AMD could have done this launch a lot better. I think what they should have done was they should have either held back the launch of the CPUs until the motherboards were ready, or they should have ensured that even if it was a paper launch, they should have launched the motherboards at the same time as the CPUs. Now, a lot of tech enthusiasts are like, that shouldn't be a problem because people should know how to update their BIOS. My take on that is, yes, I get, for someone like me, that's not a problem. But for somebody who is new to building a PC, they may not be familiar with updating the BIOS, and And, you know, you think about it, like you go to a store or you buy something off of Newegg or you buy a motherboard brand new online, especially if it's sold as a bundle, and you get the motherboard and the CPU, you go and put it together, and then you find out that the PC doesn't boot up. And the reason why it doesn't boot up is not because you screwed anything up, it's simply because the BIOS on the older motherboard, it is not compatible with the Ryzen 9000 because it wasn't meant to go with Ryzen 9000. So I am very critical of AMD on this launch because I really think AMD should have launched the motherboard with the CPU. I don't understand why they did things the way they did. The other thing too was there was the whole thing with the Windows 11 and the AGISA BIOS update and the inter-CCD latency and all that stuff. I feel like, honestly, if today was launch day for the Ryzen 9000, I think it would have been in a much better spot because today it would already have the BIOS updates and everything would just be a lot smoother than the way the whole thing went down, you know, back almost about 2 months ago when the CPUs launched as they were. So, I don't know. I thought it was a really weird launch. Hopefully AMD learns and doesn't do something like this again because overall it just makes it look, to an outsider, it makes AMD look like they're not, I don't know, like they could have done things better, or like it just looks incompetent and it looks disorganized, if we're being honest. So, anyway, let's go ahead and look at this motherboard. And if you're new to PC building, you want to always ground yourself to either a metal object. I actually have like a large metal thing here on my foot that I'll connect to. But you can also use one of these ESD straps. So if you don't have a workbench, it comes with, you know, like one of these things. But if it does, you plug that into the test bed, and that's pretty much how it goes. Okay. So this is the motherboard. I guess we'll go ahead and open this up. So just like the unboxing, basically when I did the unboxing, I literally just took everything out. Then after I was done making the video, I just put everything back in the box. I was like, okay, well, I'll just put everything back in. Alright, so it has this like heavy plastic cover, but there's no ESD bag or anything. It's just like in the box like this, with this big plastic cover, which I'll just put over here. Both Intel and AMD make you disappointed. Well, Intel has its own set of problems. Like, I don't know if we want to go there on this stream, but Intel has had its own set of problems recently. So anyway, this is it. I guess, I don't know how well that shows up. Actually, if I take it out of the box, it'll probably show up better. And this is a pretty heavy motherboard, I will say. It's got a lot of metal. It's got an awful lot of metal. I'm going to take the side panels off the case so that that's already ready to go when it comes time to install it in the CPU. In fact, I'll probably just take this radiator and put it somewhere else for now. I remember the first time I built with the LAN cool, for some reason, the doors, the hinges on these glass doors were very, very, like, I don't know, they were really, really hard to remove. So I was afraid that I was going to break it, so I didn't really want to remove it. But after building it a couple times, the glass comes off much easier now. Guess I'll put this over here. You almost got the board as well. Which board did you get a board today? I think this is an excellent upgrade for people who are on a DDR4 platform and you want to finally make the jump to DDR5. I think now is a good time to get into DDR5. Well, I don't know about that. Guess I'll have to put this. Guess I'll put it right there. Okay. All right, so this is the motherboard. What I'll do, I got my light. The reason why I got my headlamp is so that I can see down on the motherboard, and I think that'll help with the camera. Actually, should we make this larger? Maybe make this a little bit larger. Okay, yeah, I think that's better. Okay, so this is the motherboard. It has a very shiny, like the panel here is almost like an infinity mirror. There's an LCD or an LED panel. And then I think it's got some RGB somewhere else, but not a whole lot of RGB. So it is a lot more understated than the previous Crosshair, I will say. Although I never really paid too much attention to the original Crosshair because I did not have that motherboard. But yeah, it's been a long time since I've used Crosshair. So a little bit of history about ASUS's Crosshair Hero, or not just the Hero, but the Crosshair in general. This is ASUS's original Republic of Gamers product. A lot of people don't know that, but when ASUS started the Republic of Gamers brand, the very first product that was labeled as a Republic of Gamers product was the original Crosshair motherboard. And I forget what socket, but that was for an AMD socket. So ROG as a brand, it was originally ASUS plus AMD CPU. And then eventually it branched out to Intel CPUs, and then eventually it branched out to graphics cards. And then they introduced the Strix brand a number of years ago. But Crosshair was the original motherboard. Like, this was the very... So there's a heritage, there's a legacy, I should say, behind that Crosshair name. That is the reason why, if you're someone who's not too familiar with ASUS products, know this. Know that if you see a motherboard that says Crosshair, that means that it is the highest end tier. It is ASUS's highest end consumer motherboard that features an AMD CPU. Now, if we're talking Intel, it will be called Maximus. So Maximus is the Intel equivalent of the Crosshair. So keep that in mind. You got Crosshair and Maximus, and then underneath both of them, you have the generic Strix brand, and then underneath that, you have their other, like ProArt, TUF, Prime, etc. So you have all those other ones underneath. But Crosshair is the highest end on AMD, and Maximus is the highest end on Intel. So that is one thing if you're on ASUS. Obviously, everybody else got their other brands. So a couple of things about this motherboard. The main reason why I got it was NitroPath. They have the NitroPath, which means the DDR5 should perform better, meaning it should be easier to run not only higher speed memory, but a lot more memory at a more decent speed other than 4800. So the official specs are not any different. However, because of NitroPath, there's an assumption made that we should be able to achieve higher memory clocks compared to the previous generation. You got the ASRock B650E Taichi on sale. Yeah, that's good. You saved like $100 because that was originally a $350 board. Okay, let me get this out of here. Well, I guess I'll just put it like this for now. All right, so on the back, it has this really nice back plate. See, so it's fully covered with a back plate, which does actually feature thermal pads. So it does have thermal pads that sink heat away from the board. That is going to be really good because they also have on here, they've got thermal pads on both the top side of the M.2, but also the bottom. So it can sink heat through both the top and the bottom of the M.2, and that will then sink through the board and then to the back where there's a heat sink, which is basically the back plate, which functions like a heat sink, kind of like back plates on GPUs. So it does have this really thick, you can see it here, a Gen 5 heatsink. It is very heavy. This is a heavy heatsink. I don't know if they should have put a little bit more carve-outs for more surface area, but I think it's probably adequate. Unless you're running benchmark, unless you're trying to like benchmark Crystal Disk Mark all day, I don't think it should be a problem. Okay. So there's 5 M.2 drives. There's one here. There's actually 2 here. These are both Gen 5. And then you have your 2 Gen 4. There's 1 Gen 4 here, and there's 1 Gen 4 here. So you have a total of 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 M.2 drives. The VRM, yeah, the VRM I think is like 110 amps if I remember. All right, so I guess how should we do this? Should I just? I guess I'll put this on the table. This is going to be really weird doing this upside down. I'm not used to doing this upside down. But let's put the RAM in first, I guess. So they do have the latches on both sides of the DIMMs. Now, these DIMMs are different. These DIMM slots on the Crosshair and the Strix are different from every other DDR5 motherboard. They feature pins that are recessed further down, so they're further away from the air surface. So the idea is less signal to noise, or I guess less noise, so it means higher signal to noise ratio, which is a good thing. I will put the RAM in first. So here is the G.Skill. These are 24 these are 24 gig each. So this is 24 plus 24. This is a total of 48 gigabytes of DDR5 with an XMP profile that can run at 8,000 at 1.35 volts. All right, I gotta make sure that I'm facing it the right way because I'm doing this all upside down. Okay, now if you want to run 4 sticks of memory, you gotta do it the right way. So I'm gonna run 4 sticks of memory. Okay, we're gonna do this kit, and we're gonna do it on channel A, and then we're going to run the second kit on channel B. So that means normally, if I was running 2 sticks of DDR5, I would install them in A2 and B2. But because we want to run 4 sticks, we're going to run them in, we're going to run one kit in channel A, and we're going to run the second kit in channel B. Why do we do this? We do this because of manufacturing tolerances and batch tolerance differences. All right, so let me see how different these are. That kind of went in the same as how I remember, although it does have more retention force. All right, so This is the first stick, this is the second stick in the same kit. I want the same kit per channel. So I'm going to put this one right next to that one. Again, because we're going to run 4 sticks. There. These are really stiff DIMM slots. So they weren't kidding when they were saying that it has more retention force. You got to push a bit harder on those compared to a normal DDR5 motherboard. Wasn't used to that. Yeah, these have an XMP profile for 8,000. Now, I don't know if we're going to be able to do 8,000 because we're running 4 sticks. So here is the second kit. The second kit is the same exact kit, but it is manufactured at a different time. The silver sticks, these were manufactured at the very end of last year, whereas these are newer. These were manufactured sometime this year. So because of that, they're technically, even though they're both Hynix M die, they have different batches. So they could have slightly different characteristics in terms of micro impedance values, which is why you don't want them to be mixed on different channels if you're going to run them all together. That is the reason why we're installing them in the way that I'm doing it. Okay. And the last one. Okay. So we got all the RAM sticks in. That's a lot of RAM. You can see we got the white. The silver sticks are on channel A and the black sticks are on channel B. That is the correct way when you are running mismatched RAM. You want them to be on separated channels, isolated from each other. You do not want to interweave them. I don't want silver black, because now I've got a silver and a black stick. They're different manufacture dates. They have different micro impedances, and they could end up, you know, causing it to not post or not being able to run at a certain speed or whatever. So, all right, so that's what we're gonna do. This is a total of 96 gigabytes of DDR5. So we'll see how this works. All right, next we'll put the CPU in. So CPU. All right, so for the CPU, you don't want to have the socket stay in there too long without a cover. So you want to leave the cover on until you're ready. Is my battery on this dying? Okay, no, it is kind of dying. My battery on my headlight's getting weak, so we gotta hurry this up. All right, so this is the Ryzen 9, and they changed the logo. AMD used to have that circle Enso for the Ryzen symbol. They actually started using what they use on their laptops now in terms of the logo. They went with the generic Ryzen 9 square now. So just like Intel, AMD and Intel both are changing up their CPU logos. Okay, so let's go ahead and... I'm going to be putting this in upside down, guys. So it's going to be kind of weird looking at it upside down. So, alright, so we open it up. The latch goes down. The socket retention plate goes up like this, revealing the socket. There are 1,718 contacts. There are 1,718 pins. So you line it up, and you just you don't want to press on it. You just want to make sure that the arrow is pointing in the direction with the arrow on the socket. And then it goes down, and see, the cover's still on there. We're going to leave that there because, watch, we're going to put that there, and the cover just pops right off. So it just comes off automatically. And that's how you install the CPU. Alright, so You also want to hold on to this. You don't, just in case you do a motherboard swap or you do like an upgrade. You want to cover up the socket. You don't want the pins to be exposed. What are we talking about? All right. Put that over there as well. Okay. So we got the CPU and we got the RAM in. Now we need to put this in the case. And I believe this has there's like a cover on this. I'm going to take that off because that's going to block heat from escaping. And then we got one here on the back as well. This one, oh, well, yeah, I guess I'll take it off now. And okay. I think the tab didn't come off with it. There we go. Okay, we'll get that later. All right, let's put this in the case. I don't know if 8000 is going to work at this capacity. So we'll see. I'm not expecting that to work at that speed. I'm expecting 6000 and 62 and 64 to work though. I'd be very surprised. Let's put it this way. I'd be amazed if it can boot at 8000 with this much RAM. Need to check my standoffs, make sure they're all tight so it's not going to be loose. Okay. Alright. The nice thing about this is that it is a standard ATX. That was what I was trying to get off earlier, but it was stuck on there because the tab, the pull-up tab, like came detached. Okay. Okay, I'm just lining up making sure that I'm not crushing any of the connectors. Okay. Alright, so it looks like I've got all the standoffs in place. And the nice thing about this, all 9 of the screw standoffs for the motherboard to the case, they're all visible. Like they're not covered up by some heat sink or something. So that was something that I didn't like about some of the older motherboards in the past. I'm going to use this Be Quiet screwdriver to put, hopefully this will fit, I don't know. You had to get a 1000 watt? What were you using before? $1,000 watts pretty much the minimum these days, I would say. With the way power consumption is getting. I thought we were supposed to get more energy efficient, not less energy efficient. But it seems like power consumption... It seems like power consumption has only gone up. Hasn't really gone down. You know what? I'm gonna get a different screwdriver. This Be Quiet screwdriver is too big for these screw. Like it's not doing a good job. I gotta get a smaller one. Okay, that's better. 3090 is around 90% faster than 4060. Man, 4060 is that slow? Well, they're designed for different monitor resolutions. One of them is designed for 1080p, the other one's designed for, well, it was originally designed for 4K. It didn't really age that well, but... Well, okay, if we're going by NVIDIA, the 3090 was designed for 8K. You guys remember the marketing for that? You guys remember that? 3090 was an 8K GPU. It was the BF GPU, Big Ferocious GPU. RTX 3090. It was in Jensen's kitchen. It was in his oven. He was cooking that thing in his oven. All right, I think that's all 9 of them. All right, so this is in. So now we just need to plug in all the stuff. So I got my 20 pin. Or my, what is that, USB, 20 gig USB for the front. We have the 24 pin right here. That's in. There's a fan header, which I need to figure out where that's going to go. And then I've got my dual CPU EPS connectors right here. Alright, so those are in. So we got all the power, CPU, EPS. Is that in? That feels like that's... Yeah, that's in. Okay. Alright, so this, then the USB... What is this? Is this... Oh, this one goes here. We got a fan header for something. Where's this going to go? That's a water pump header. We got chassis fan 1. I guess this one can go on chassis fan 1. I have the front panel audio, which needs to go here. Alright, so front panel's in, or front panel audio. Where am I going to plug this in? I think this will go up there. I'll probably have to route that differently. This will probably have to route differently too. But for now, I can put this like that. Although it'll probably have to route differently. Then we got this, yeah. Okay, so Most of it's in. I need to just get my the fan header cables need to be routed. Oh, and the front panel, which I think are these. Yeah, these. Those go there. Where is the speaker supposed to go? Does this motherboard not have a thing for the speaker? You know, I don't see a place for this. Unless it's, oh wait, does it go on the top? No. 4. Does Asus make motherboards that no longer use the speaker? I don't see a place to plug the speaker in. And I usually use the speaker, the case speaker, to indicate when it posts successfully. So that's weird. Yeah, I don't see... Unless they're using... That's the clear CMOS. Yeah, I don't see a place to plug the speaker in. Unless it's under... No, it wouldn't be under there. Yeah, did they literally make a motherboard that doesn't have a place for this? The one thing that's missing from this, you can't actually use a case speaker or buzzer with this motherboard. That is very... I don't like that. I don't like that because, well, at least they have this. At least they have the postcode debug. But how is it that they don't have a place to plug the speaker in? That's bizarre. That must be the clear CMOS. Oh, unless it goes... No, I don't know what this connector is. Unless that's another... Wait, is that another one of these? Oh, wait, that's... Yeah, that looks like... Okay, so they got 2 of these, but they don't have a place to plug the speaker in. I don't like that. So you can't use a speaker with this motherboard? Every PC that I've ever built, I always put the speaker because that gives me the postcode beep. So I'll plug this one on chassis fan 3. Yeah, I don't understand why this doesn't have a place to plug the speaker in. I don't like that about this board. Because I know the Carbon has that. I don't really like that about this. Anyway, it's probably okay, but that's gonna take some getting used to, because I usually, like, historically for me, I listen for the beep to know when it's gonna go into Windows, and it should definitely be down there. I don't know where it is. Is that like the next thing that motherboards are gonna start removing from motherboards? Alright, so I've got the fan headers, the fans for the front intake, and I think was that the back? I can't remember what that one was. Oh, that's the one that goes there. Okay, so I've got all the fans. I got the rear fan and the 3 front intake fans. Those are in. Alright, so now we gotta put the CPU cooler on. Alright, this is gonna go. This is essentially gonna go like this. Oh yeah, then there's these. Then there's these fans, which I think are all on one. So does it have a pump header up here? Or is that like way down there? Okay, AIO, they got optional fan, CPU fan. Okay, so this third one is this one. So this one goes here. And then these go here on this one. Actually, it'll be easier if I do this while it's upright. There. Okay, now I need to put the mounting hardware for this. So we're gonna have to take off these. Some of the AIOs, they use the existing mounting. They basically use this thing on the motherboard, but a lot of them use their own, so we'll have to remove. And you make sure you don't lose this. You want to probably put this in the motherboard box for storage in like a plastic bag or something. This and the screws. How does that look? I guess that looks fun. Alright, and if I remember correctly, for deep cool, it's pretty much, you put these 4 things on, and you just hand tighten them. It is going to be really weird without the beep, because I'm used to listening for the beep. But at least I have the postcode. The only problem with the AIO is is so big, you can barely see the postcode because the fans are covering it. I mean, I can see it, but from this angle I can see it. But if it's like on the floor, with this AIO, I won't be able to see it. Maybe I'll be able to see it through the top of the case, though. Alright, and then I think this... I think this just goes in. I gotta plug the pump in too. That is going to be hard to reach. Okay, so that one goes there. That's in. And then this should go on like so. Yeah, and I'll have to put the thermal paste on. I'm just test fitting it first. Go route these cables so they're not in the way. All right, and get something to clean that off real quick. Where is? Oh. All right, now the thermal paste. Do you notice the X870 Steel Legend is worse than the X670? What do you mean? How is it worse? In what way is it worse? I'm just hand tightening this stuff. Just putting this on. Now it is magnetic, so that is nice that it's magnetic. But I'm just hand tightening this, and then I'll use a screwdriver once I got them in. Yeah, these are actually pretty heavy, so it's best to put them on with the hand first, and then tighten them down. Alright, so the AIO's in. Need to tidy up the cables here. All the fan cables from the radiator's fans are just kind of dangling around. And then I've got this as well. And I forgot how this even works. I guess I just... Oh, it plugs in up there. I guess it just plugs in up here. Is that 2 pin? Okay, 3 pin. Is that how that goes? I assume that is how the deep cool thing goes on there. And because of all these cables from the deep cool, I can barely even see the postcode, so I don't even know. There we go. Okay, I just tucked them in up there. Okay, so I don't know how well that shows up on the camera, but that's everything. So now we just need to plug it in. Is this in right? That sits on there magnetically? Okay. Alright, that's pretty much it. Let me lift it up. Oh, I gotta put the GPU in. Technically, you don't actually need the GPU though, because we can use the integrated graphics, but I'll just put the GPU in. What made me go with the Asus instead of the Gigabyte or ASRock? We covered that in a live stream previously. So the Gigabyte leaves lanes on the table. So there's like 2 lanes on the chipset that are completely unused. To be honest, if I was going to go with a different brand, it would probably be MSI or ASRock. The ASRock Tai Chi, we were talking about this earlier. If you're somebody who doesn't want the PCIe lanes to be shared with M.2, the Tai Chi and the Tai Chi Lite are the best options. Alright, this is the graphics card we're going to be using. This is the reference 7900 XTX. So this is the reference card from AMD. So we're just going to plug that in. In fact, this will give me a chance to test this weird new way of removing the graphics card. So it goes in, and they're saying to remove it from the side where it screws in, you lift up, and then it comes right out. Okay. So that is interesting. Okay. I still think it would have been better if they would have included the button. I like the button. I need to get the, where's my screws? Need to put this in so it's supporting the card. There. I think this is the right one. Okay. If you're getting a GRE, you recommend either the Power Color Hellhound or the Tough. Aren't those getting harder and harder to find? I feel like GRE is selling out. I don't see a lot of them anymore. That could be a sign that newer GPUs are on the way. Well, at least I don't know about the end of the year, but I think probably early next year. This GPU is nice because it only uses 2 standard 8 pins. Okay, I think that's everything. So now it's time to turn it on. I'm trying to remember, was there something I was supposed to do with the fans on the front? I guess they're in. We'll find out. Put that over there. I don't like, the only thing I don't like is there's no speaker for the motherboard. Okay. Oh. All right, we have the ROG logos lighting up. Here we go. Code 15, memory training. That's a good sign. And now we just wait. I got the monitor over here. $15. Okay. The ASRock Steel Legend is a decent option for the GRE, and you see it in stock at MSRP 500. 550. You mean the which one? Are we still on code 15? Yeah, we're still on code 15. Yeah, because this is the very first boot up, and because we're doing 96 gigabytes with 4 sticks of memory, this is going to take a while, I think. Yeah. Alright, I think it's coming up. 31, alright. Okay. Now, I don't have a... there's no buzzer, which is annoying. I don't like that about this motherboard, so I can't hear the post beep. So we're not going to get a post beep. We're just going to have to look at the monitor. Alright, it's quieting down, which means it's already... Yep, 99. That's good. And there we go. New CPU installed. There it is. So we can make this a little bit smaller now. And there we go. We have liftoff. Alright. New CPU installed. So this is the message that you get no matter what motherboard brand you buy. The very first out-of-factory post will have this message regarding the FTPM. So this is the... I forget what F is. It's basically the one that's soldered on the motherboard. The Trusted Platform Management System. It's basically a security chip. So if you have BitLocker or encryption enabled, the system will not boot without a recovery key. So keep that in mind if you are somebody who is currently, if you want to upgrade your computer, you're changing a motherboard, and you're going from, you know, your old PC that has Windows installed, and if you're using BitLocker on Windows, you want to make sure before you do a motherboard swap, you want to make sure you back up your BitLocker key to a USB thumb drive or something, so that when you do the motherboard swap, you will input the key and then you can get into Windows. Otherwise, you won't be able to get into Windows. So anyway, press yes to reset, and then it says press no or N to keep previous. So we're going to press yes. You know what? The RGB on this Trident Z G-Skill and the infinity mirror on the Deepcool LT720 really matches the ROG infinity mirror on the motherboard. So all of this is like insane amounts of RGB. So this is a lot of RGB. Alright, there it is. Okay. Asus ROG Crosshair X870E Hero ACPI BIOS revision 0304 AMD Ryzen 9 9950X 16 core processor. So, okay, and then it says total memory 98 gigabytes. So that's 96 gigabytes. It's 98,304 megabytes. DDR5 3600. So this is as expected. It posted at 3600 because we're running 4 sticks. That is the max official speed from AMD. So if you're running 4 sticks of RAM. So we're going to have to overclock this. Alright, I need to see this. So, alright, so we're in the BIOS now. And it's been a long time since I've been in the Asus BIOS. It has been several years now since I last... And I didn't really think this through. I need to probably move this around a little bit so it's easier for me to see. But you can see right there, 4 sticks of DDR5. Wait, that's the first thing we're going to do is we're going to try to see if we can get this to run at 6,000. Test out that Nitro Path technology. Going to be bending the cables a bit here though to do this, but should be okay. Move this a little bit more, tilt it this way. And you know what? What if we do that camera angle so that people can see like all that RGB RAM? I want to see all that RGB RAM and the ROG logo thing too. I don't know if this will go down a bit. Yeah, that's better. There. Fans are spinning. I got my back fan spinning. The front fans are spinning. The AIO radiator fans are spinning, and the radiator. Oh, there we go. Okay, that wasn't on all the way. Let me check the pump speed here. Make sure that's maxed out. So Q fan. This would be. Does it show me the speed? Oh, it's full speed. This one's full speed. Okay. So they're both full speed. So I'm assuming that is working as intended. What I usually do is I feel the tube, the radiator tube, to feel the water flowing. And yeah, there is vibration there. So the water is flowing. And I don't understand. Okay, the fan speed. What about the pump speed? Pump speed NA. Pump speed. Okay, there it is. So we are on AIO pump, and it is currently going 3,000 RPM. The impeller is going about 3,100 RPM right now. So we're going to leave that as is. We're going to leave this auto detect for the chassis. That's spinning about 750 RPM. The CPU fans are spinning about 960 RPM. So far, so good. I'm going to leave that there. This is on a Giza. Okay, so we are on the launch day BIOS. This BIOS is already outdated. So the first thing I want to do is update the BIOS. So we could probably do that. I could probably do that later. I just want to see what it does with the RAM. So let's go to Extreme Tweaker. It has been, I'll tell you guys, it has been probably about 3 years since I used an Asus motherboard. So I'm very familiar with the overall layout, but it has been a while. So just bear with me here. So anyway, AI overclock tuner. We're going to set this to DOCP1, I think. Or no, what's DOCP2? DOCP, let's do DOCP2. And then I'm going to manually set this to, well, you know what? You guys want to try 8,000, see if that actually works. 8,000 on 4 DIMMs, total 96. I don't know if it's going to work. Maybe we'll try, well, let's see. F clock, that should be, this needs to be 2,000. Ah, okay. This is the reason why I purchased the motherboard. So it has. Someone was asking what made me choose this motherboard over Gigabyte or the other one, Gigabyte or ASRock. This is the feature. So it has this thing called E-clock mode. E is external clock mode, asynchronous mode. So you can either do auto, which is basically just one B clock for everything. But it has synchronous mode and it has asynchronous mode. So asynchronous mode is kind of the secret technique that allows you to essentially get a 6 gigahertz overclock without affecting RAM, PCIe, and NVMe and all that other stuff. Because what this does is we can raise the B clock, the E clock, I should say, one of these, slightly up so that if we're using Curve Optimizer and Curve Shaper, if we're doing, like, for example, a 5.9 gigahertz overclock using Curve Optimizer and PBO and Curve Shaper, then we can also use the E clock in asynchronous mode to slightly tweak it so that when the multiplier is combined with the E clock, the base clock or B clock, you can get 6 gigahertz. So I'll be doing a video on that in the future, but that is probably the #1 reason. That combined with the Nitro path is the reason why I bought this motherboard. Otherwise, I would have probably ended up getting either the MSI Carbon or the ASRock Tai Chi. So we're going to leave that on auto for now. I guess let's try... I don't think this is going to work, the 8000. I really don't think that's going to work. We're also not on the latest BIOS, which doesn't help. This is on a BIOS from early August. So actually, let's load... what is it? Oops. I hit the keyboard there. DOCP1, what does that do? Load the DIMMs, default, memory timing, and other parameters optimized by ASUS. And this other one is load the... Okay, we want to do DOCP1. Actually, I want to test... Let's not do 8000 yet. Let's do 6000 first. Let's do 6000 Gear 1. Where's the div ratio? I don't know where the div ratio is on this, on ASUS. Memory frequency, F clock. Timing control. Is it in timing control? Turnaround. I don't know what any of this stuff is. Turnaround times, PMU training. Okay, here's proc ODT. This is the stuff for, like, if you want to run 192 gigabytes at like 5600 or 6000, you have to manually adjust. Oh, there's the div mode. Okay, so I'm gonna leave that like that for now. So let's just go ahead and try ASUS's tweaked settings, although I want to know where is the voltage for VSOC? CPU VSOC. I want to manually set this to 1.2 volts. SOC local voltage reading. That will probably go from the motherboard. Yeah, we're gonna do that. That's like the only manual setting that I'll do. Alright, so we're gonna F10. They have the update. Yeah, I know. Okay, so I'm going to set DOCP1. DOCP1 basically means XMP 1. We're going to override the profile, manually run it at 6000 Gear 1. F clock is 2 gigahertz. I'm manually setting 2 gigahertz. And then I'm manually setting an SOC. Actually, you know what? Cancel this. I want to know what it would auto, what would it auto the SOC to? So what is it going to do SOC? Sync all PMCIs. 1.35. What does it do for SOC though? All right, well, let's see what ASUS decides to do. Hopefully it doesn't overvolt my VSOC and kill my CPU. I'm just gonna trust in ASUS. Let's trust in ASUS. What could possibly go wrong? Code 15. Hey, I can see the little code 15 from up here. That's nice. I can actually just look down at it. Auto timings are scary. I think auto voltages are scarier than auto timings. Code 15. Everybody's code 15. Everyone's favorite. I'm letting ASUS decide what the timings are. The only thing that it's loading from XMP is the primary timings. I've told ASUS's BIOS, you decide the sub-timings, the tertiary timings, the voltages. You do that. Just make sure you use the primary timings. And actually, I should probably update the BIOS. I'm gonna just go ahead and download. Let's download the latest BIOS, and we'll probably just flash that. Because the one I'm using is from August. I'm just to see what's the version. So they don't even have the version that I'm running. Yeah, my BIOS is older than the oldest one on the website. So they have one from September 27th. That's the latest one. So I'm downloading the one with Agisa 1202. 1202 is the one that has the new inter-CCD latency fix. Okay, so I've got the latest BIOS on there. Let me make sure I know what the file name is. Crosshair Hero, what is this? 0505? 0505, okay. You know what? I'm going to plug it in up here to test. I want to test this. You're building your first PC this Christmas? All right, it's still going. It's still code 15. Alright, it's progressing. It did something. Okay, I see the numbers now. 31, 40, what is that? 4F. Alright, it's coming up. Yeah. Okay. Alright, because there's no M.2, it's going to go in the BIOS automatically. And what did it do? Alright, we're running 6,000. Okay, so it did 6,000 with the XMP primary. But what I want to do now, I'm just going to go ahead. Let me see, make sure what version this is. So this is BIOS version 0304. Is that on their website? 0303. Okay, so this motherboard came from the factory with the BIOS on Asus's website that says version 0304. So where is, just to kind of show people what we're doing here. Where's the window? Okay, so let me make this smaller. This is too big. Why is it? Oh. I'm too far away from the keyboard. There. Okay, so support, driver and utilities, BIOS and firmware, see all. So this is the BIOS that my motherboard currently came from the factory with. So we have version 0304. It says September 23rd, but the build date on my BIOS actually says August 8th. So that's pretty old. Agisa 1200A. 1200A. So we're going to actually go to this one, which is hilarious that it doesn't actually show the full description. So how do I... Okay, there you go. Updated Agisa 1202. 1202 fixes the inter-CCD latency for Ryzen 9 9900X and 9950X, so we definitely want to update to this. Fix the issue where BitLocker automatically turns on. Fix the failure of easy flash rollback under certain conditions. Improve system performance and fixed various bugs. Updated EC firmware from 0119 to 0120. So this is the reason why you do BIOS updates, guys. Because this, you know, like, it's in your best interest to do this. So we're going to go ahead and update this one. Alright, so I already have... You see, it should be in here. So we're going to go to... Tool... Asus Easy Flash Utility, and then I'm going to select the BIOS that I downloaded earlier. It's this one here. So just to show what I'm doing, I have a bunch of BIOSes on this thumb drive for various motherboards. So here it is, ROG. Why is that one on the mouse? Yeah, that one in red or in yellow. Please back up your BitLocker recovery key and suspend BitLocker encryption in the operating system before updating the BIOS to avoid unpredictable situations. Please load the default settings before updating the BIOS. The system will restart before updating the BIOS. Okay. Do you really want to update the BIOS? So it's asking me, do you want to go to version 0505 from September 27th? Yes. Alright, processing. Alright, it's going to turn off. It's going to turn back on. It's going to come up on that screen where it's updating the BIOS. We're running it at 6,000. We loaded the 6,000 profile, dude. We're running 4 sticks at 6,000. For the guy that was saying it's running at 30... It boots at 3,600 on the initial boot. That's normal. But then you load the profile, and then it boots up with the memory profile. Like any other configuration. Okay. I actually have some MSI BIOSes on here from like a long time ago. I even have a Crosshair 6 Hero, a Crosshair 8 Hero Wi-Fi BIOS, a Threadripper TRX 50 Sage Wi-Fi BIOS is on here. And there's some other stuff. So anyway, it's going through the update now. You have no audio? No, I think I'm still... You guys hear me? The audio's working for you? Okay. Yeah, I don't know. I think that's on your end then if you're not hearing me. But yeah, QDIM is going to be very useful because QDIM with the regenerator, the clock retimer, that is going to allow, that will probably solve the problem of like high density dual rank 4 sticks. Updating Area 5. So if there's an Area 5, is there like an Area 51 or something on here? Updating Area 2. Yeah, when I update the BIOS, I usually do it this way. I do it from within the BIOS using ASUS's Q Flash, or MSI's M Flash, or Gigabyte's. What does Gigabyte call theirs? Gigabyte actually calls theirs Q Flash. Yeah, Asus calls it Easy Flash. It's funny how they all have different names, but they're all the exact same thing. Asus calls it Easy Flash. MSI calls it M Flash, which is very easy to remember because MSI. Gigabyte's is Q Flash. And ASRock's one, what is ASRock's one? It's called a Flash Tool or Flash Utility Tool or something. It has like a very formal name. Yeah, I really think like if you want to do high speed memory, you want 48 gigs of RAM memory. So you want 2x24 for a total of 48. If you want to use a lot of memory at a decent speed without any trouble, you go 2x48 for a total of 96 gigs. Now, if you want a lot of memory, like what we're doing here, we're running 4 sticks of memory, then you do 4 sticks, but keep in mind that the highest we'll see what we can do with this. But typically the highest you can do with 4 sticks is around 56 to 6,000. So right now, like I have these 4 sticks, we're running at 6,000 Gear 1. Okay, so update successful. I like how it says update successfully. I like how it says update successfully. Not update successful, update successfully. System will restart. Alright, so now it's going to come back with, it's going to do it's going to train again, and it's going to come up at 3600, because when you do a BIOS update, it clears out any sort of overclock profile, so you have to either load that back in if you saved it in the BIOS, or you have to reset all your settings. Alright, so it's coming back. Oh, BIOS is updating. Do not shut down or reset the system to prevent system boot up failure. Oh yeah, it did have a, what do you call it? An EC, it's like a EC firmware thing. Yeah, EC firmware was updated from 1019 to 1020. BIOS is updating LED firmware. Do not shut down or reset the system to prevent system boot up failure. Okay, so this is updating the final component. It's updating, apparently it's updating the ROG firmware there on the back. It's updating this stuff. Okay, so Crosshair Hero plus enter to thing. Okay, F1. Alright, so we're in. Now it's on the latest. So this is the latest BIOS, September 27th. BIOS version 0505. And as expected, it basically set the RAM back to default. So we're going to have to load that profile again. So let's do that now. So F clock, we'll manually set it to 2000. I don't know if it manually sets it. And then we will do, well, I'll just auto the voltages, I guess, and let it do its thing. So we're going to load DOCP1 for DDR5 6000. And what was the other thing that I forgot to check? Where's, oh, I guess, yeah, I think that's it. Because I think I didn't mess with the fans. The Q fans, I think I left this the way it was. Yeah, the impeller's at 3000 RPM, and everything else I think is on silent profile. Or no, okay, CPU's on standard. Okay, so that's fine. 776 RPM. 500 RPM on that one. Nothing's plugged in over there. Okay. So it's going to load this. Frequency is going to do the XMP profile 6000 for all 96 gigabytes across 4 sticks. We can also tune this further as well. Like, we can tighten up the timings. We can do all that stuff later. You want to be able to run Star Citizen at 4K, 120 FPS? I think there's a limitation with that just because of the way Star Citizen is designed. Oh, with upscaling? Well, even with upscaling, though, like, doesn't Star Citizen get stuck at, like, a CPU bottleneck? The only CPUs that can handle Star Citizen well are the X3D CPUs. Because it's so, like, it's so CPU bound, it really needs as much cache on the CPU as you can throw at it. So, yeah, I have a feeling the Zen 5 X3D, so, like, a 9800 X3D, or even a 9950 X3D and 9900 X3D. I think those are going to be amazing CPUs because the IPC increase on Zen 5 is not a trivial increase. We're talking Geekbench. Geekbench single thread on the Ryzen 9000 is like 3400 something on single thread. And the multi-thread's like 22,000 on Geekbench 6. So, yeah, I mean, that's really good. Single thread on Cinebench R23 for this CPU is like 22,000 60 or not 22,000, 2,200, 2,000. It's somewhere between 2,200 and 2,300. And then multi-thread on this is like 42,500 roughly. I mean, plus or minus, you know, within your cooling and power limit and all that stuff. Man, the ROG logo on the Hero, this screen, looks like some kind of Las Vegas advertisement. Better invest in cryogenic technology so you can freeze yourself until 2090. Oh, you're talking for the guy who wants to run Star Citizen at 120 plus FPS. I know, right? How are we doing here? Okay, it's almost done. It's still doing the. It's still setting the tertiary timing. I keep seeing 3070 and 7700 XT. I don't know what the conversation regarding those graphics cards is about. I just keep seeing messages where someone like 3070 this, 7700 that. Like, I don't know what that's about. 3070 Ti could run most games fine at 1440p. Yeah, I would agree with that. The only problem with that graphics card is the memory. It only has 8 gigabytes of VRAM, so it's going to be very limited with newer games. $2080 Ti. Oh, which one is better, 3070 or 7700 XT? I think they're very close. They're about the same, as far as I remember. I think those GPUs are actually very similar. Okay, so we're back in, and there you go, 6,000 on the RAM. You can see it right there. We're running 4 sticks at 6,000. Now you can further tweak this. Now I can't get into Windows because I don't have an SSD. So this is pretty much the end of the build. Like, the whole goal of the stream was to basically get into the BIOS, update the BIOS, load XMP or EXPO, and then make sure it works. So we've done that. I will say this: the RAM, the 4 sticks of memory takes a lot longer to train. You guys may have noticed that we were talking for like 3 minutes. It took like 3 minutes for it to train. To do the training, it took that. So you want to see if we can do 8,000? All right, let's see if we can do 8,000. All right, I'm going to bump it up to 8,000. All right, there we go. Whoops. You can see, well, you can barely see it, but that says 8,000. We're going to go to 8,000. I don't expect this to work. I will be very impressed with Asus if their Nitro Path technology that they were boasting about, well, they weren't boasting, they were touting that they had Nitro Path patented technology for the trace wires on the Hero and the Strix. So the only 2 motherboards that have this. Let's see what it'll do. So that's all well, actually, hold on, let me go back here. Well, should I just leave it on auto? Alright, there you go, guys. We're going to go from 6,000 to 8,000. You can barely see it, but it says 6,000 to 8,000. This is either going to take a very long time to train and it'll fail, or it's going to take a very long time and it'll succeed. Here we go. Code 15, that's good. It's attempting to actually do it. Oh, it should be 1.2. For this, I left it on auto. But Asus should change it. So that 6000 was gear 1. Good point. It will automatically do 1-2. In fact, it has to be 1-2. You cannot do 8000 gear 1. So the way I like to explain the gear, the 1-1, 1-2, think of it like a car's transmission. What happens to your transmission if you're driving a stick shift or a manual and you pull away from the green light, so the light changes green, you're in gear 1 in your car in a stick shift, and you're accelerating and you hear the rev start going up. What are you supposed to do? You're supposed to shift to the next gear. So if you don't shift, what happens? What happens to your car's transmission if you don't shift and you're just pedal to the metal? What do you think will happen to the transmission? I don't know if that needs to be answered. That's basically a rhetorical question. So obviously, it's going to use 1-2. You hit the rev limiter, you basically burn up the transmission. Or you just stall. So, this is no different. I like to use that transmission analogy because that's exactly what's happening here. If you're going to run at 80 miles an hour, you're not going to be driving the car at 80 miles an hour or 80 kilometers an hour for those in the UK or those in the EU. You're not going to be running your car, you're not going to be driving at 80 kilometers on the expressway in gear 1. Okay? So there's none of this 1-1 thing. That is an impossibility if you're trying to run the RAM that fast. So far, it's actually doing pretty good. It's code 15. It hasn't like messed up. So it might take a while, but it seems like it's doing something. But see, this is the reason why having the postcode debug is a must-have. Like, I will never buy another motherboard that does not have a postcode debug, because if I'm going to be doing RAM overclocking, especially with these 4 sticks of memory like this, I don't want to be sitting in the dark having no idea what's going on. At least when I see code 15, I know that it's memory training. I know that it's doing something. It didn't stall out and was like, hey, I need you to clear CMOS. Okay. It turned off and then it turned back on. Now it's 15 again. So that means it's probably going to revert back, or it's going to actually go. We'll see. I don't know. Yeah, I know. That's why the Pro Art is kind of a joke. Alright, so it's actually doing something now. Yeah, it's going to go to the BIOS now. So it's actually code 99. It's going to post. That's the post, the green light. If there was a speaker, it would post. Okay, the system has posted. So let's go into the BIOS to see what it actually did. Okay, so it didn't work. So we're back. It basically went back to the original, the previous one. So let's try 6400, because I think it can do 6400. So I'm gonna try 6400. So you guys can see we've set it to 64. What do I want to change here? Now the only thing is, I don't know. I assume it knew what it was doing when it was. I assume it was trying to do gear 2. I hope it wasn't trying to actually do 1-1, because that would not have worked at all. The other thing too is all these settings here. RTT nom write, RTT nom read, write, park, the DQS, so there's the drive strength, the data drive strength, the proc ODT, the signal strength. These things can be manually adjusted if you're trying to hit higher speeds with 4 sticks of memory. So that is something that will take some time to do. So we're not going to do that on here, but let's try to get it to here. Let's get this set to do 64. Let me go back here and adjust the. Where's the main menu here? All right, I'm gonna try 6400. Let's see if 6400 will work. But 8000 with 4 sticks is still too much. Now, having said that, what will make 8000 possibly with 8000 and this much RAM or these many sticks of RAM, CUDIM or CUDIM will most likely make that work because CUDIM has a clock retimer on the DIMM. What that means is, so typically the way it works today, if I've got my CPU, with a memory controller, and I've got my RAM over here, today when I'm sending signal from the CPU's memory controller to the RAM, the signal goes across the wire on the motherboard, and essentially, like, it's fully dependent on the ability of the motherboard to drive that signal across the wire and maintain the integrity. Now, the reason why this is a challenge with DDR5 is because you're trying to drive a much higher speed over that long distance, over that wire. So that's the reason why it's hard. But with CUDIM or CUDIM, you have a clock receiver on the DIMM. So when you drive the signal to the RAM, before it actually goes into the memory modules, it will go into essentially a signal regenerator, which will clean up the signal and then send it to the data. Now, that cleaning of the signal, in general, that is a good thing. That should fix the issue with higher speeds not being as stable. Now, what that does for 4 sticks of memory, I don't know. I would assume that it would improve 4 sticks of memory because you would have a read driver on all 4 DIMMs. So I would assume that it can help with running higher amounts of memory, especially 2 DPC configurations. Did I consult the QVL? I mean, I looked at it. This RAM is not on the QVL. Just so you guys know, this RAM is definitely not on the ASUS website. Okay, yeah, it's still going, but... So, the one thing I know, the good news is that you can do 4 sticks at 6,000. Now, I'll have to test that later to make sure it's stable, but, I mean, I'm the guy that was able to get 192 gigabytes running on the previous generation motherboard a year ago. And now, that's stable if you're okay with turning off the computer when you're done using it and then turning it on, basically cold starting it every time. But if you're somebody who uses S3 sleep or what's known as standby mode with that much RAM at that kind of speed didn't work that well. So that's the reason why I think the signal regenerator will help a whole lot in those scenarios. Can you cycle through the different... I mean, there's nothing to cycle. I don't know what you mean. We don't have an operating system. There's no SSD, there's no Windows, there's nothing. This is just a motherboard with the CPU, the RAM, and a graphics card connected to a power supply. That's all we've got. I don't have an SSD, I don't have Windows, I don't have Linux. All that stuff will come later. Alright, let's see what it did. Oh, it actually worked. Oh, okay. So 6400 actually worked. So we're now running we're running four sticks of DDR5 at 6400. So okay, so that works, guys. That works. Now I don't know how stable it is. I'll have to test it, obviously, later on. So that will be a separate video. But that is nice to see. So that proves that we can do better speeds. Because I was able to get 5600 and 6000. I could definitely get 5600 working with four sticks on X670E, on an Aorus Master and an ASRock Steel Legend. Now, it's nice to see that it looks like the newer motherboards can actually run the higher, like slightly higher speed. So it looks like 6400, maybe we can do 66, maybe we can do 68. But the problem with doing 66 and 68 is as soon as you do that, once you go beyond 6400, you can't use 1-1. You have to upshift to the next gear. You have to upshift. So, or is it downshift? You basically have to shift gears if you're going out beyond 64. So this is kind of the maximum that you can expect if you want the best overall performance, because I think 6400 it's still pretty affordable. It's once you go up to like 7600, 8000, etc., 8200, that's when you run into problems with the RAM being very expensive. So 7200 is flying a little close to the sun. Yeah, the problem with 7200 is I don't think it's worth it, to be honest. Doing 1-2 is not really worth it until you get to 8000. So here's the thing, guys. Keep this in mind. When you run your RAM at 8000 1-2, it basically means that your fabric and your memory controller are synchronized 1-to-1. But your memory is basically running at twice the speed of the fabric and the memory controller. So the memory is basically taking over the burden. So you're getting the same kind of performance that you get with 6400 1-1. So the rule of thumb is 6400 1-1 is roughly equal to 8000 1-2. So if you're somebody who wants to run 4 sticks of memory like we're doing here, the upper end on X870E, and keep in mind, this is the most expensive motherboard that's X870E right now until the godlike shows up and just like, puts this motherboard in the trash, because the godlike is probably going to be better than this motherboard. The main reason why is because the godlike is a 10-layer server-grade motherboard, which means it has even better noise isolation than the Crosshair Hero, which means the godlike is probably the most likely. It is the only motherboard that I can think of that will most likely be able to do 192 gigabytes consistently at 6000 and maybe 6400. So keep that in mind. So that is probably the one motherboard that can surpass the Crosshair Hero. But this is pretty good. We can do 64 with 4 sticks of memory. But if you want to run a lot of, if you don't care about running 4 sticks of memory, if you're okay with like 2 sticks of memory, like 48 gigs total, you can easily do 8200, 8400, or 8000. And if you're running 82 or 84, you can overclock your fabric so that your fabric will match your memory controller's clock in that 1-2 mode for the best performance. I will be using this motherboard to overclock the fabric and with 2 sticks of memory running at like 82, 84, etc. in the future. And once CU DIMMs start rolling out, I will definitely be testing CU DIMM to see if that helps with like 4 sticks at higher speeds, or just higher speeds in general with lower voltages. So I can't wait for the CU DIMM. CU DIMM is the future, guys. Like basically CU DIMM is the Cam 2 stuff in the regular DIMM form factor. So anyway, that's good to see. And let me see here. Yeah, 64 at 1.35 volts. We're doing 1.35. We're doing, what did it do for my VSOC? What did Asus do to the VSOC? VSOC, it did 1.24 volts. I think that can actually be tuned down to 1.2 volts, but that's something that I'll test manually later. The other thing that I want to look at while we're here, and we're probably going to end the stream soon because we've achieved the goal of basically building it successfully with the 4 sticks of memory at a higher speed. I want to look at the overclocking. So let's look at the curve shaper and the curve optimizer. So Precision Boost Overdrive. Precision Boost Overdrive will go to, what is it, enabled? What does that mean? Allows processor to run beyond defined values. How come Asus doesn't have like a... There's no motherboard number. I guess it's like enhancement? Oh no, that's not it. Is it enabled? Is it manual? No, it's not manual. I guess... Okay, Asus's motherboard is a little weird. Instead of the motherboard setting for PBO, which is basically like unlimited power on the Intel motherboard, it looks like it's basically either auto, disabled, enabled, manual, or some weird thing. AMD Eco mode is also a setting. So it's got AMD Eco mode, which means... Oh, okay, that's cool. So the AMD Eco mode has 3 different configurable TDPs. It has 65 watt, 105 watt, and 170 watt. So that's interesting. I'm just going to set this to auto for now. And then Precision Boost Overdrive Scaler. So I like how, unlike ASRock and Gigabyte, I can't speak for MSI because I have not used an MSI motherboard with this stuff before. But what I can say is, at least with the Asus board, I like that it tells you in the PBO menu, it says CPU fused boost clock limit. So it basically says 5,750. So 5.75 gigahertz is the F max on this CPU. So if we change this to manual, I can say customize Precision Boost Overdrive Scaler. The default is 2x. You can actually go all the way up to like 10x. And what this does, this will increase the maximum boost voltage. So for example, if the maximum boost voltage at all cores was 1.335 or something like that, this will change it to like 1.375 or 1.37. It'll basically increase the amount of voltage that it can boost to more aggressively. So that's what this overdrive scaler does. So for those of you that are afraid of changing voltages, you probably don't want to change this beyond the default, which is 2x. So 2x is the default, but it goes all the way up to 10x. I think 5x is probably a happy medium. That's like right in the middle. And then CPU boost clock override, that is auto. But what this does is we can set this to either disable, or we can set it to enable positive or enable negative. What this does is this will either increase or decrease the F max. So I'm going to put this to positive, and the maximum that you can key in here is 200 megahertz. If I try to, I'm just going to purposely try to type 500 megahertz, and I hit enter, it automatically adjusts it down to 200. So you can basically go from 5.75 to 5.95. So what I've effectively done is I have said, hey, I want the maximum CPU speed to be 5,950 megahertz. So almost 6 gigahertz. What is there any stability on the 8? Yes, it works. It works, but you have to be on 2 sticks of memory. If you're on 2 sticks of memory, you can do 8,000. I've got lots of videos showing that. So in fact, if I were to take 2 of these memory sticks out right now, I would be able to run 8,000 on this kit of RAM, because this RAM has an XMP profile for 8,000. But unfortunately, we're running 4 sticks. 4 sticks has way too much electrical noise for the memory controller to handle 8,000. But if you run 2 sticks of memory and your RAM is capable of hitting 8,000, yeah, 8,000 is very, very easy to do on the new X870E motherboards. So this motherboard, definitely, it can easily do 8,000. In fact, the older motherboards can also do 8,000. Alright, so we basically, with this setting, we have, in theory, we have overclocked it now to 5.9 gigahertz. That doesn't mean that it's going to force it to run at 5.9 gigahertz, but it means that it is allowed to go up to 5.9 gigahertz or 5.95 gigahertz. Your 6400 RAM is Intel running it fine. Yeah, that works fine. Dude, all this RAM that I've got, all this RAM that I got is Intel XMP memory. I'm using Intel XMP memory. I've been using Intel XMP DDR5 on all my AMD systems like the whole time. And it works fine. This kit of RAM that we're using right now, there's 2 of them in here for a total of 4. This is Intel memory that has an XMP profile for 8,000. Okay, so that's that. Where's the, okay, here it is. Here it is. Enable the switchover to safe curve optimizer value during periods of very heavy loading. That is very interesting. I did not know that setting. That's a new setting I've never seen on the previous motherboards, or at least on the non-Asus motherboards. So in here we have curve optimizer. Curve optimizer can be all core. It can be per core. Wait a minute. So this doesn't actually have... Wow, that's interesting. So wait a minute. This doesn't have per CCD? This BIOS doesn't have per CCD. It does. That's really weird. I could have sworn that Asus had per CCD as well. So this BIOS from Asus does not have per CCD for a curve optimizer. It only has all core, or it has per core, which is, I mean, that's, oh wait, am I in Curve Shaper? No, this is Curve Optimizer. That's weird. So this one, okay, this one doesn't have per CCD. That's very interesting. I probably should have looked at the first BIOS that this motherboard came with to see if that was in there. That is very interesting. Okay, and then Curve Shaper is here as well. So Curve Shaper is here. So we can basically say, hey, if I'm doing a Cinebench run, or if I'm running all the cores, I want my... I want to undervolt effectively, so we're going to do negative, and we can do like negative 10, or negative. You can do up to negative 30. You cannot go beyond negative 30 on Curve Shaper. Now, Curve Optimizer, I think it lets you go all the way down to negative 50. I don't recommend doing that, because that could introduce instability at the lower frequency ranges. Like, for example, if the PC is autoing or idling, it's doing nothing, it's just sitting on the desktop doing absolutely nothing. If the Curve Optimizer negative offset is too low, you could introduce instability while the computer is doing nothing, because the voltage is too low for the CPU to operate stably. So that's why I don't recommend like negative 50 or negative 40 on Curve Optimizer. So the nice thing about Curve Shaper is you can do, say, negative 15 or negative 10 on Curve Optimizer, so you're not really impacting the idle and the low frequencies, and you can use Curve Shaper to further undervolt the higher frequencies or the full load frequencies. So that's the nice thing about the new curve shaper feature. So what I'll do is I'm going to go, actually what we'll do is we'll do, let's go back to Curve Optimizer. I'm very surprised that this doesn't have a per CCD. I'm pretty sure Asus had that because I remember watching Scatterbencher's tutorial and he had per CCD, but he wasn't using this motherboard though. He was using the previous X870E Crosshair Hero. So that might be something that Asus needs to add in there, or maybe they meant to have it in there, but it's not in there for some reason. But anyway, all core. So we'll do all core, and I'll do like -10. So we'll do a -10 curve optimizer. So I don't have to worry about the low frequencies stalling. And then we can go into curve shaper, and we can say, hey, I want my Cinebench to be negative. We'll say -20. So we'll do a -20 offset, a magnitude, when the temperature is high. And then for the high frequency, while playing games, I want it to be undervolted by, say, 10. Okay, so that will be like so the 10 on here will combine, it will stack on top of the -10 curve optimizer. So now I have like a -20, but only applied to the gaming frequencies. So basically from 5 gigahertz to 5.5 gigahertz, I want a -20 curve magnitude. And then for my Cinebench or my video rendering, I want it to also be, I want it to be -30. So I'm doing 20 on Curve Shaper, and I'm doing 10 on Curve Optimizer, so they stack, so it becomes -30. But the benefit of Curve Shaper is my minimum frequency and my low frequency are only running at the -10. I'm going to leave them alone, and I'm not going to do anything in Curve Shaper for those. So that is the real benefit of Curve Shaper. It allows you to effectively undervolt the regions that matter. So that is something that is a vast improvement when it comes to overclocking on AMD compared to the way it was before, where you had to hope that you won the Silicon Lottery and that your CPU was really good at undervolting. Here you can have an average overclocker, and you basically compensate for the leaky voltage on, like, let's say you have let's say you lost the Silicon Lottery and your CPU has very leaky current on one CCD or both CCDs even. With Curve Shaper, you can still get the benefit of the undervolt in the frequency ranges that actually matter. Yeah, we're running PBO. We're running PBO and Curve Optimizer and Curve Shaper. I've already gone through the settings for PBO. So PBO, we are basically setting it to auto power limit with a manual precision boost override scaler of 5x with a 200 megahertz positive offset. So we've effectively overclocked the CPU to 5.9 gigahertz. And then what I'm going to do, we're going to F10. Those are all the settings. So we're going to hit F10 and enter to save that and let it boot, like, post again. Now, obviously, I don't have an operating system installed, so I'll have to test this off stream later and then do a follow-up video on the overclocking guide for X870. All right, and then it already posted, so there we go. It's going to go back into the BIOS, and there we go. So now we have the overclock applied. So we have PBO, we have 5.9 gigahertz, and we have Curve Optimizer -10, and we have Curve Shaper up to -30 for all load, and we have -20 for gaming loads. The only thing that Curve Optimizer does with a negative offset is allow for the CPU to boost to this. Yeah, basically, okay, the easiest way I can describe what Curve Optimizer does, think of it like you have a given frequency, and you have an amount of voltage that you have to apply to reach that frequency, to basically reach that frequency. So it basically looks like a curve. Now, what I like to visualize what's happening when I apply a curve optimizer offset, think of it like you're sharpening the curve. You're basically sharpening the pencil. So instead of these like mountain-looking points on the voltage frequency curve, think of it like you're sharpening the pencil. So you're getting like these peaks. You're getting like sharper peaks for certain points. So you're using less voltage for a given frequency in that same time duration. And here's the magic of it is when you use less voltage, that means less heat. So remember, Ryzen is designed to basically target a high temperature. It's going to boost until it hits, in this case, 95 Celsius. At 95 Celsius, it levels off. It basically boosts until it hits 95, and then it flatlines. So if you can reduce the temperature, you will increase the aggressiveness and the frequency of the boost. So that's why when you use less voltage means less energy, which means per unit of work, which also means less heat, which means lower temperature in a given time interval. So that is the magic of it, because by reducing the voltage, you're using the margin of the CPU to still hit those frequency peaks within that given time interval with a lower voltage, which means a lower temperature, which means a longer boost duration. And that is how it improves the performance. So think of it like you're sharpening the pencil. When will I put an OS on it? That's going to be tomorrow. I have to get one from a different computer. I have to basically decommission one of my existing computers, pull the SSDs out of it, and then put them in this motherboard. And that's probably going to be my ASRock Steel Legend. The reason why it's going to be the ASRock Steel Legend is because, unfortunately, the ASRock Steel Legend does not have a postcode. So that's the motherboard that's on the chopping block, because that one doesn't have a postcode. The Aorus Master that I currently have has a postcode, so I'm going to keep it. In fact, we are currently live streaming on an X870E Aorus Master. Like, the computer that I'm streaming on right now is the Tech Thursdays live stream PC. And the CPU in the PC that we're streaming on is a 7950X3D. That's what we're streaming on right now. Do I use... Yeah, I've got Linux. I've got Linux in the Threadripper system. Yes, I have a Linux PC. Man, talking continuously, this dries my voice out. I'm like losing my voice here. Need some water. Does this show... Okay. Yeah, well, I think that's pretty much it, guys. How long have we been live? I've been live for 2 hours and 46 minutes. Yeah, that's... Well, that's it. I guess that's it. You guys can see, like, the 4 sticks work at 6400, the AIO, the RGB. We updated the BIOS, so we're on the latest BIOS, which means we have the fixed... like the lower latency on the inter-CCD, that's improved with this BIOS. So far everything looks like it's working smoothly. So are you saying that the new CPUs on the X670E would handle faster RAM? Yes, they would. But not as consistently compared to the newer motherboard. Because keep in mind, the main benefit of the newer motherboard is the motherboard manufacturers like Asus, MSI, Gigabyte, ASRock, they have, think of it like these motherboards have the knowledge, the experience from dealing with DDR5 on the first generation motherboards. So that means that the way their engineers trace the wires that run from the CPU socket to the DRAM slots, that is much more optimized compared to the way it was on X670. So there is still an argument to be made for getting a newer motherboard. So if you're somebody who is buying, if you're looking at upgrading to the current generation, or especially if you're thinking of getting the upcoming, the 9000 X3D CPUs, I highly, highly, highly recommend that you get one of the newer motherboards instead of one of the older motherboards, because you're going to have a more consistent experience if you're trying to push higher memory clocks, for example, or more memory. Like for example, right here, we are running 4 sticks of DDR5 at 6400 right now. Okay, so good luck trying to do that consistently on the older motherboards. I mean, it's the same story with Intel. If you guys remember, Intel had Z690. Z690 was their first generation DDR5 capable motherboards. Then they launched Z790. So Z790 was like the second generation DDR5 motherboard for Intel. Now with AMD, X670 was the first generation, which launched a month before Intel's second generation DDR5. So now X870 is basically AMD's second generation DDR5 motherboards. So obviously, you know, second generation, the learnings from how do we improve our motherboards compared to how they were on the first generation, all that stuff is baked into the newer boards. Therefore, if you're building a new system with a Ryzen 9000 CPU, you're going to have a better experience overall if you go with an X870 or X870E, because these motherboards were designed to be paired with 9000 series CPUs. The older motherboards were designed for the 7000 series. That doesn't mean you can't mix and match. I mean, I could put a 7800X3D in here, and I'm sure it would work fine. And I've been running the 9950X in an older AMD motherboard basically since that CPU launched about 2 months ago, and it was fine. So, but I got this because I wanted asynchronous E-clock for overclocking, and I wanted to run 4 sticks of memory and see how far I could push the memory with 4 sticks. So expect me to show you guys, we will be covering 192 gigabytes of DDR5. I'm going to try to get it to run at 6000, maybe 6400. So we're going to try that upper limit on the RAM and see how far I can push it with this new motherboard. You would just stick with 9950X. Windows 10 would definitely help with the gaming and getting more FPS. Yeah, but Windows 10, the problem with Windows 10 is you're missing out on a lot of the new stuff. If you don't care about anything that Windows 11 offers, then by all means, stay on Windows 10. The one thing that Windows 11, one way that Microsoft is forcing you to upgrade to Windows 11 is Wi-Fi 7. All these new motherboards feature Wi-Fi 7. So this motherboard has Wi-Fi 7. All the other X870 boards that launched today have Wi-Fi 7. However, Windows 10 does not support Wi-Fi 7. Microsoft purposely locks you out of Wi-Fi 7 capability in Windows 10. I learned that last year because when I built my Threadripper system, my Threadripper motherboard came with Wi-Fi 7, And I couldn't use Wi-Fi 7 until I upgraded to Windows 11. Yeah, so you pretty much have one more year left with Windows 10 before you're kind of... I mean, that's the other way that they force you to upgrade, you know, like kill off support for the operating system. I do think, though, that the 9950X3D, if that is a dual X3D CPU, that is probably going to be a monster CPU, because they're going to put the best binned CCD with Vcache as the first CCD. Then they're going to put, like, you know, the regular run-of-the-mill CCD with the Vcache as the second one. So, man, that thing is probably going to... I don't know exactly what they're going to do, but I think that is going to be a really nice CPU to pair up with a motherboard like this. But if you're building like a content creation, high-end desktop, and you care more about productivity, you care about having a lot of RAM, you care a lot about like your multi-thread for things like DaVinci Resolve, for example, or Handbrake or whatever, then yeah, then I think the regular, like a 9950X, that's probably the way to go, so there isn't really much reason to wait. And I want to add another thing. If you game at 4K resolution, like in my case, I play games at 4K. This right here, this is a 4K monitor. This is a 4K 27-inch monitor. So I game at 4K resolution. And if you're gaming at 4K resolution, like the difference between X3D and Intel and the like this Ryzen CPU, there's almost like no difference at 4K because you're always GPU bound at 4K. So that's the other thing too. Like if you're building a productivity PC and you're doing content creation and you're using a 4K OLED 240 Hertz from LG or Samsung, you know, those brand new monitors, you don't really need to wait for X3D. I mean, 9950X is probably the way to go. That's what I did personally, because I'm pairing this up with a LG Ultra Gear 32-inch 4K. That's exactly what this PC is going to be paired up with for gaming and content creation. So, yeah, I don't really see the point in waiting, but I mean, you could wait just to see. I mean, especially if your PC is only like 3 years old. If your PC is 5 years old or 7 years old, upgrading to this is like night and day difference compared to a 5-year-old PC at this point. $4K OLED all day. Yeah, I mean that's what I do. I can't do it any other way, man. Like I saw that Sony announced that new InZone 27-inch 1440 480 hertz, and when I saw the 1440, I was just like, that's a complete skip. It's an automatic skip. Once you go to 4K, it's hard to go to a lower resolution. You just get too used to having all that screen real estate. You know what I think of when I think of 4K? 4K is like when you step up, like when you buy your first house, or you move out of your parents' house and you're on your own and you have all this space. It's like you go from having your own bedroom to it's like now you have your own kitchen, you have your own living room, you have all this real estate. Or if you're buying your first house, you went from like an apartment to a house, it's like all of a sudden you have all this space. That's what it's like when you go to 4K from like 1440 or 1080, because it's like all of a sudden you have all this screen real estate and you can put all these windows everywhere on one screen, and it's great. It's very hard for me to go from 4K back to like 1440p, especially now that these OLEDs are doing 240 hertz 4K, especially the LG, which is the one that I've got, because if I want to do like if I want to play like Overwatch 2, not that I really play Overwatch 2 these days, but if I want to play like a first-person shooter or something where I need the precision frame rate, I can press the button on the monitor and drop it to 1080p 480 hertz. So it's like I have the option to do that, but at the end of the day, I really want that 4K. How good is Windows with choosing the correct cores when you have 8 regular and 8 X3D? It's totally fine, John. Like, case in point, we're streaming on a 7950 X3D right now. If I'm not playing a game, and somebody just subbed and I can barely see who that is, Akuma the Dawn just subscribed to the channel. I appreciate it. If you're not playing a game and you're just using Windows normally, Windows is smart enough to use your faster CCD. So the one CCD that has no Vcache, that CCD can turbo all the way to 5.7 gigahertz on the single thread. So, and that's if you're not playing a game. Now, you play a game and game mode is enabled in Windows, then it's going to push the game to the 3D Vcache CCD. Like, Windows knows how to do that. Now, if you don't want it to do that, then turn off game mode in Windows, and then it'll just assign it however it feels. And usually what it does is it will assign it to the fastest cores. They'll basically treat it like a standard, you know, whatever's the fastest, whatever's available, that's going to take the workload. So it's very simple. It's either you turn game mode on if you want to guarantee that it uses X3D for the game, and if you don't want that, you turn game mode off, and then it basically functions like a you know, a regular Ryzen 7950X. That was fixed like a long time ago. That was fixed a long time ago. Take it from I'm someone who actually uses the CPU. I literally have the box right there on the bookshelf for the 7950 X3D. I've been using it since it came out February last year, and I mean, it works fine. Like, it does what it's supposed to do. It's a very consistent experience now. There's no problems. All the misinformation out there on the internet is a bunch of people it's just blind conjecture, and it's people who actually don't have the hardware most of the time. And that's the case with Intel. Like, a lot of people who like hate on Intel, they don't even know what they're talking about half the time. Like, all these people saying that their CPU melted or CPU blew up. You know, like, I don't know what they did. I mean, I'm not saying that Intel didn't have a problem. Clearly there was a problem. But I don't know how severe it was, you know, compared to the overall failure rate. So I feel like a lot of it is just blind conjecture and misinformation. It just spreads like wildfire. And it's unfortunate that the tech enthusiast industry is like that. Because, like, one thing, like the Intel CPU vmin problem, that turned into a giant headache for Intel. That was a huge fiasco. Intel's still suffering from that. And then AMD, like, AMD being stupid and not launching the motherboards with the CPUs, or they didn't wait until the BIOS was they should have launched with the latest BIOS. Like, the BIOS we have today, the BIOS I literally just updated to, that fixes the inter-CCD latency issue that was visible at launch of these CPUs. They fixed that. But think about it like this. If AMD launched the 9000 series today with these motherboards, I think the reviews would have been a lot better. Like, it would have been more well received because it would not have the inter-CCD problem. It would not have this weird, like, mismatch performance nonsense thing. It's like everything would have been way more consistent. So it's just kind of, I don't know. At the end of the day, the CPUs are fine. The Intel's, like, I have the 13900K. I use it as like a home server. It's fine. I've never had any problems with it. Now, I don't game on it, so I don't know. Like, if I were to try to load up a game, like if I were to try to load up The Last of Us or Dragon's Dogma and do the shader compile, would my 13900K survive? Probably, because I don't normally game on it, so I would assume that it's fine. And I have it on the latest BIOS already. But I mean, the reason why I don't game on Intel is because as someone who live streams and then plays games and live stream at the same time, I don't want to sit here playing a game for like 4 hours while talking to the chat, and then my room, meanwhile, the Intel CPU is dumping like, 250 to 300 watts of waste heat because we're streaming and gaming at the same time. Plus the GPU is also dumping all this heat. I don't want to be sitting here and then I'm feeling all this heat just like burning me up while trying to talk to the chat. That's the reason why I use AMD as the streaming PC and the gaming PC, because it's an efficiency thing. Like a lot of people are like, oh, but who cares about power consumption? No, it's not about the power consumption, guys. It's about the literal heat that is just filling up your room. That is what it's about. You could switch to the Intel PC for winter streams. I mean, that's a good idea. That's a good idea, but it's one of those things where I've already built the PC as a server. You set it and forget it, it's a server. Like I'd have to tear that down and just convert everything. I don't know, I could probably do that, to be honest. I could switch to Intel for the winter. It's strange that you say that, but I actually might consider that. What I would do is I would take like the 16 core Ryzen and I would like turn that into the server or something. I would basically swap them. Intel is for playing outside and replacing the fireplace with a gaming setup. I hear you, all that heat. Yeah, I know. Like, and the thing is, I have like 2 PCs in this room. Like, we're running this PC right now. I'm not actually, this PC is idling. It's not doing anything. We're literally sitting here in the BIOS. So this PC is cold. Like, I'm touching the radiator. Like, there's no heat. I mean, it's cold air. It's not doing anything. But if I was actually doing something with this while the other PC is also running, that's 2 PCs in a room, in a bedroom, essentially. Like that's, we got to be practical here, Like it has nothing to do with, oh, Intel is this and AMD is that. No. It's very practical. It's like, what is the energy efficiency like? For the extra, what? For the extra 80, you would go with the... Oh, they're talking about GPUs. The whole time there's been like this separate conversation in the chat about graphics cards. I have no idea what that discussion is about. Like, I keep seeing like people are talking about graphics cards. I don't even know what the context of that conversation is about. There's like a whole nother discussion going on in the chat the whole time. I don't even know what it's about. The 5090 should should heat your whole house. Well, I know that it'll heat the whole room. I mean, what I could tell you guys, like, the 4090 at stock doesn't actually use that much power for what it is. Like, it's rated for 450. The connector can pull up to 600, although I do not recommend trying to run 600 watts through the connector. But it's rated for 450 watts. But realistically, the 4090 is more like 350 watts. So it's actually not that bad. I'll tell you what graphics card is bad, and I'll show it to you. You want a mini nuclear reactor? $3090 Ti. This has been in retirement now for like almost a year. The RTX 3090 Ti. There it is. The Founders Edition RTX 3090 Ti. This thing uses an insane amount of power. This thing is rated for 450 watts, just like the 4090. But unlike the 4090, this actually will pull 450 watts. I remember trying to play Star Citizen with a 5800X back in 2021. I was using a 5800X. This is before X3D existed. And I was using the 3090 Ti. And I remember this thing was dumping so much heat in the room, and it was obnoxiously loud with that low-toned sound that it was just weird, man. 3090 Ti. The 3090 Ti. Yes, I say Ti because that's the way Tom Peterson would pronounce it. Jensen will say Ti. It depends on what day of the week it is. Sometimes he'll say Ti, sometimes he'll say Ti. Technically, the official pronunciation is RTX 3090 Ti. Ti stands for titanium. That is the official name from NVIDIA. Believe it or not, that is the official name. Now, the public has never actually pronounced it properly, so they end up calling it TI, and it's one of those things where it's like, to me, it's almost like an accent difference at this point. It's like, do you speak British English, or do you speak American English, or Australian English, or Canadian English, or English is your second language? You know what I'm saying? Like, that's basically what the difference between saying Thai and TI. The more you buy, the more you save. Like, what did that have to do with the Thai? Like, he wasn't trying to sell you a Thai when he said that. He was trying to sell you, well, oh, that's right. He was trying to sell you a 2080 Thai. But I remember, man, this summer at Computex, Steve Burke and what is the name of the guy from Kit Guru? Leo and Steve with their the more you buy, the more you save, the more you buy, the more you... That was great. That was priceless. That little skit that they did outside of the convention center in Taipei, priceless. That was such a golden clip. Does it make any difference? You want to start streaming? What makes what difference? What was the question? I didn't see the question. You mostly play FPS games? What was the whole thing about? What was the whole context of that? Like the question about, does it make any difference if I want to start streaming? Like, what makes a difference? Like, what's it? I don't understand. The GPU between that and that, those are close in performance. How much VRAM does the 4070 Super have? I forget. Is that 16 or is that 12? It's 12, isn't it? Isn't 4070 Super 12? Yeah, okay. Well, I mean, it depends. I would say overall, the 4070 Super has slightly better ray tracing, but at the end of the day, I will say this. Like, looking at a 4070 class product or a 7800 XT product, and if you're comparing ray tracing, I wouldn't even like use ray tracing, because at the end of the day, those GPUs, both of them, even though the 4070 Super is slightly better in ray tracing, it's not good. Like, the difference is not good enough to make it worth it over the additional VRAM that you get with the 7800 XT. So I would say, like, whichever one you can get a better deal price wise is probably what I would do. And most of the time, the 7800 XT is a lower price. Now, having said all of that, if you can find a 7900 GRE, that is actually what I would get. I would get the 7900 GRE over the 7800 XT and the 4070 Super. But 4070 Super versus 7800 XT, it's kind of a toss-up. It's like one of them has more VRAM, and it's a little bit cheaper. So I think longevity-wise, that's probably the smarter buy. The other thing that you want to keep in mind is we're very late into the cycle now for the RTX 40 series. The 50 series at the high end is inbound now. So once NVIDIA launches the 50 series, all of their engineering and optimization efforts will be diverted away from the 40 series and focused strictly on the 50 series. So that is the other thing to keep in mind. NVIDIA goes with whatever is their current generation. So because they want you to buy their current generation. So today that's 40 series. But as we know, 50 series, 5090, 5080 are inbound within the next quarter. And then 40 or 5070, 5070 Ti, all those other ones, those will follow early next year. So just keep that in mind. So that's why it's very hard for me to recommend mid-range NVIDIA, because the people who buy mid-range NVIDIA, like for example, the people who bought the 3070 and the 3070 Ti, they're the ones that got shafted, because once 40 series came out, NVIDIA's like, haha, you guys are losers. You don't get DLSS frame gen. You know, regardless of whatever you think of frame gen, it's like, haha, 30 series doesn't have access to DLSS frame gen, and they no longer get optimization. So they only get bug fixes. So keep that in mind. And they're shortchanged on VRAM. They were shortchanged on VRAM because people who bought 3070 were getting 8 gigs of VRAM, and they were spending a lot of money for 8 gigs of VRAM. Meanwhile, if somebody bought an AMD card like a 6800, that outperformed the 3070, and it had 16 gigs of VRAM versus 8. So it was kind of that was more of like a no-brainer. But this time around, like 12 gigs versus 16, they're closer, but same situation where, whatever NVIDIA comes out with to accompany the 50 series, you can bet they're going to lock people who have 40 series out of that, and to try to entice them to upgrade. So that's why it's very hard for me to recommend. I rarely ever recommend mid-range NVIDIA for that reason. For me, it's really, NVIDIA is like the ultra high-end, or nothing else, really. Like it's either Intel at the bottom, and then AMD kind of like all throughout the middle. AMD really offers like really, really good value. And then NVIDIA's just kind of like up there at the very high end of the market. So 4070 Super is GDDR. I mean, that doesn't really matter. The capacity is what matters, not what the memory is. You know what I'm saying? Like, doesn't matter what the memory is. As soon as you run out of memory, you run out of memory. It doesn't matter what the memory is. The memory could be GDDR7 or GDDR5. It doesn't really matter. If it's 12 gigs, it's 12 gigs. Anyway, 3090 Ti was a power hog. This is probably the most highest wattage GPU that I have ever owned. I guess we'll just put it up here. You can just sit there on top of the case. The radiator is like right here, so the radiator blows the air like in front of the 3090 Ti. All right, I think that's pretty much it for this stream. You're selling the 4070 Super because it's too powerful? Okay. Okay. Cool story, I guess. The 3090 Ti is a true Titan GPU since it uses the full GA. Yeah, this is the full GA 102. This was the 450 watt gas guzzler. I don't know. It's a gas guzzler. I mean, it heats up the room. Like I put this in the computer, the room becomes a sauna if you're playing a game with an uncapped frame rate. Back in its box. It's sealed away again. Until it is needed once again, it will sit and wait. The 3090 Ti will sit and wait until the day it is needed once again. Where do you store all those product boxes? I mean, a bunch of them are there. Some of them are like in, so you guys can't really see it, but there's a closet here. There's a closet here full of like computer boxes. Computer hardware boxes is literally like right here next to me. Like, where do you put all those boxes? They're literally right in this closet over here. You're waiting for 5090? Yeah, 50, as we get into October, I expect we're gonna see a lot more leaks and info on the Blackwell GPUs. How should you sell the 4070 Super now? Like, if you sell it, what are you gonna use? Like, do you have an older GPU? Do you have a newer GPU? Like, you're gonna sell your GPU and then what? I mean, the 50 series isn't out yet. RDNA 4 isn't out. I mean, heck, Battle Mage isn't even out. So why are you going to sell it now? You're just going to sell it and then just not have anything? Or do you have like an older GPU? That's the most random thing I heard all day. Like, I'm going to sell my 4070. Okay. What's the plan? Like, what's the objective of selling it? Are you quitting gaming or something? Or you know, like, you're not going to be able to get a 5070 until next year. So, I don't know what that... It's weird. It just sounds weird, man. It's like, no offense, it just sounds really strange. It's like, hey, I'm going to sell my... Okay. This is iGPU. Well, that's the thing too. Like, you know, the Ryzen, these Ryzen motherboards, this motherboard from Asus, this motherboard can drive at least 3 external monitors. You can drive 3 4K. Now it's only 4K 60, but you can drive 3 4K 60 or 3 1440p 120 or 144 hertz off of your integrated graphics on a Ryzen 9000 series CPU, off of a motherboard like this. Because every USB 4 port can handle 1 or 2 monitors. I think you can handle like 3 monitors. And then the motherboards often have either HDMI on the back or DisplayPort or both. So it's like, yeah, you can drive like a whole... Like, you can sell your GPU, get like X870E board, or maybe even like a B650E, but those don't have USB 4. So it's like, you could get like a new motherboard. Like, I literally could have done this build without the GPU. Like, I would just plug the monitor into the back of the motherboard. So I didn't have to test the GPU. The reason why I wanted to put the GPU in there was because I wanted to practice like the new, like Asus has that new quick remove mechanism. They got rid of the button. You have to basically like pull on the GPU from the side where the monitors connect at the back. It's kind of weird. Like, I have a feeling that I wouldn't be surprised if they get a lot of customers or people who try to build their PC and they break the slot when they try to remove the graphics card, or they break the clip because they don't do it correctly, versus if Asus would have just kept the button. It's funny because Asus invented the button for removing the graphics card, And then literally everybody else copied. Well, they didn't copy because Asus has a patent. So everybody else, like MSI, invented their own button. ASRock has their weird like rubber band thing, you know, like the slider. Like ASRock has the sliding thing. And then Gigabyte has their own button also. So it's like the three other ones all like came out with their own designs. And then what does Asus do? They get rid of the button. It's like, what? Like, it's like Asus is like, you losers are still like on the button. Like, we're beyond that now. The only problem is I have a feeling the button is better than like, oh, you expect people to know how to like pull up on the GPU so it comes out versus you know, just having the button. Like, I don't know. Like, I personally think Asus screwed up. Like, I would have not gotten rid of the button. That button was really nice. Very good feature. Anyway, guys, that's probably going to be it. So yeah, that's 96 gigabytes at 6400 DDR5, 4 sticks of memory. Thanks to Asus's Nitro Path technology. I guess that's why it's working like this. I will do some benchmark testing. I will stability test it. I got to pull SSDs from another PC and get that set up. So anyway, that's it. I'll catch you guys Thursday. If you guys are new to the channel, because I know there's a lot of people that are watching this. I wasn't expecting these many viewers, especially like sticking around. I appreciate everybody sticking around because we're now almost 3.5 hours into this live stream. I was expecting this live stream to be like 90 minutes and it would be over, but yeah, I appreciate everybody sticking around. If you guys are new to the channel, we do live streams every Thursday evenings, North American time. So if you're in South America, it's a little bit later in the evening. If you're in the EU, you're like what, 6 to 8 hours ahead. So it's probably really late over there. So anyway, yeah, we do live streams every Thursday. We talk about PC building, like PC build, hobbyist stuff, and PC gaming. Sometimes it's more gaming focused. Sometimes it's more hardware focused. So yeah, 6 a.m. Yeah, it's really early now. But yeah, I appreciate you guys tuning in. So if you're new to the channel, get subscribed to the channel. We talk about this stuff. We go in depth. So like, I don't know if you guys were here at the beginning. I'm using the wrong mouse. But we did go over the block diagram. So I do these sort of in-depth discussions, like for example, Asus doesn't provide the block diagram, so I literally derive it myself. So I know what's connected where. So I can do this basically for any motherboards. If you guys are doing a new build and you want me to draw you the block diagram on stream, I can do that, and then you feel free to like screenshot this or whatever if you're planning on getting this motherboard, because I think this is a very useful diagram to have, particularly for the Asus Crosshair Hero. Save this block diagram and email it to Asus. I know, right? Like, they need to... Asus still doesn't show their block diagram. Everybody else shows their block diagram. If I want to see MSI's Carbon Wi-Fi, I can see the Carbon Wi-Fi's block diagram. If I want to see ASRock's Tai Chi or Tai Chi Lite or Steel Legend, they'll show it. If I want to see Gigabyte's Aorus Master, Aorus Pro, Aorus Elite, I can see it. But Asus, they're real secretive. So that forces me to resort to revealing the secrets. Is there going to be an extreme variant? There could be. There could be. So MSI has already gone on record and stated that they'll have another wave of motherboards. Now, I don't know about Asus. Asus may have stuff in the works. I know Gigabyte there was a leaked picture of the Gigabyte X870E Aorus Extreme. So there is going to be a Gigabyte Extreme. There is going to be an MSI Godlike. And there may be an MSI Ace at some point in the future as well. So there may be additional motherboards, just not at launch. So yeah. Those motherboards might launch alongside the X3D CPUs. The 90, like the 99... I don't know about the 9800 X3D because that might be coming really early. But the 9950 X3D, the 9900 X3D, those might be getting... a second wave of newer motherboards. So we'll see. But we do this type of content on the channel. I mean, it can be in depth like this. It can be whatever, regular discussions, PC build stuff. I don't really do live stream building like this all the time. This is kind of like, oh, it's a new motherboard launch, so we're gonna do content on this. So, but expect to see videos regarding memory overclocking, CPU overclocking. We'll get the test results out. I'm gonna do some comparisons between, like 4 sticks of 96 gigs versus 2 sticks at 96 gigs, for example, because I have 2x48, so I can do 96 with 2 sticks, and I can do 96 with 4 sticks, which is what we have here. And they're both running at 6400. We'll tighten the timings up to see if 4 sticks single rank versus 2 sticks dual rank, which is better. Like, that's the type of content that you can expect to see in the future, as well as overclocking guides for PBO, Curve Optimizer, Curve Shaper, all that stuff. And I'm also going to revisit some of the Intel stuff now that Intel's gotten the BIOS updates for the VMin fix for the 13 and 14. So we are going to also cover some Intel stuff in the future. So stay tuned for that as well. But yeah, we talk about this stuff all the time. So if you're new to the channel, do get subscribed so you don't miss out. And if you have build-related questions, it's always best to ask them live, because I tend to address those. And sometimes if it ends up being a really useful segment, I might actually turn that section from the live stream into its own video, so that more people can learn from that. So anyway, that's gonna be it for this live stream. Thank you all for watching. We'll be back on Thursday with Tech Thursdays, and until then, take care, and I'll see you guys next time. Thanks.